Hey guys, John here from Bring the SEO. This short presentation, I'm going to cover a number of ways in which you can increase your retention rates. Now, many agencies have low retention rates with clients leaving just after a few months into a campaign. This really makes for an interesting conversation because I spoke with someone recently during a coaching call. This particular person runs a small digital marketing firm, and he said for him, the majority of his clients typically cancel out at around the 6-month mark. That was really confusing to me because I knew that, I certainly know that the majority of my clients stay with me anywhere between 2 to 3 years. I, in fact, have some clients that have stayed with me for as long as 5 years. So hearing someone say that their retention rates are on average around 6 months, that was certainly concerning. And I think for a lot of SEO agencies, and especially freelancers in particular, they have these high churn rates. And this is my next point, of course, which is this is often referred to as churn. They have these high churn rates where you've got that fast turnover of clients. You know, you onboard a client, they stick with you for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then they cancel out. So I'm going to go through a number of reasons why clients cancel, and then I'm going to share with you a number of strategies that you can implement that will help increase and improve your retention rates. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the problems associated with churn. Firstly, inconsistency around income, and this is where you get into those big peaks and troughs in terms of, 1 month you'll be doing, let's say 50,000, the next month you might drop down to 20,000, then you go up to 80, and then your income is all over the place. And this puts you in a difficult situation because you have uncertainty around that income. And where it gets really tricky is there's no predictability around forecasting your earnings over a 12 or 12-month period, let's say. Secondly, having to constantly chase new leads. This is quite possibly one of the most frustrating parts of having to deal with churn, is that you're constantly trying to chase leads. You're doing outreach, and you're doing paid, and you're doing, you're getting referrals and word of mouth. You're having to try and constantly, month on month, fill that gap between, this month we lost 6 clients, next month we need to, try and fill that space. We need to get maybe at least 6 or maybe some more. And it puts you on this hamster wheel of, clients leaving, the clients are going out the back, coming in the front door, and they're going out the back. So having to constantly chase new leads is incredibly frustrating. The next point is poor outcomes, which hurts reputation. If you've got clients that are only sticking around for a few months, there's obviously a reason for that. There's a problem somewhere. And I know from what I've experienced, and I've certainly seen other SEO consultants experience the same thing, if you've got a client who isn't happy with the service that you provided, they're going to let everyone know about it. And this is where you can end up getting bad reviews and all sorts of things. So that's not a good place to be either. Because of course, with those negative reviews and all of that stuff that, that hits the internet, that stuff can potentially cost you new clients in the future. Next is a loss of enthusiasm within the team. If you're constantly picking up new campaigns, new clients, and working on new campaigns, and everyone's putting in the effort around those campaigns, and then all of a sudden the client cancels, then you have to sort of down tools and you're back to square one. And this is very similar to inconsistencies around income. You have these big, highs and lows within the team. Okay, this just looks like a great project. We can't wait to get started. You're 4 months into the campaign. Oh, okay, everyone, that client's canceled out. And that cycle repeats and continues over and over again. And slowly, gradually over time, that can affect your team. And of course, as a result of that, there's a lack of enthusiasm. And the last point, of course, is the added stress and anxiety dealing with dissatisfied clients. Nobody wants to work in an agency where they've got clients who are constantly dissatisfied with the service, making complaints, threatening to cancel, and all of those other things. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, why do clients leave? We need to get to the bottom of this and start by asking the question, why do clients leave? Here's a couple of points from my own personal experience that I've seen firsthand as to why clients leave, as well as what I've seen some of my students experience. The first one, of course, is lack of results. This is probably the main one. Inability to clearly see a return on investment. Providing clients with reporting that clearly demonstrates a return on investment, that's ideal, because when you're at that point, clients just won't want to leave. They can clearly see that they're putting $1 in, they're pulling the lever, they're getting $3, $4, or $5 out. And if you're not providing them with reports that reflect that, then of course they're going to see the whole thing as an expense and cancel out. The next point is poor communication. And this is one that I've certainly experienced. It's mostly doing during my sales presentations, onboarding new prospects. I'll often ask who you've been working with previously, what was the experience like, and they'll often, in almost every case, I had clients that would say to me, we decided to cancel out, John, because we never heard from them. We had no idea what they were doing, and every time we called, we'd get bounced around between several different accounts managers, and it was just, the whole experience was just awful. The next point sort of echoes what I've already touched on. That's confusing and meaningless reports. If you're sending clients reports full of technical jargon and squiggly lines and bar charts, and the phone's not ringing at their end, well, again, they're paying a lot of money for a fancy PDF report, and that's not ideal. The next point, and this is probably another big one, is expectations weren't set. And when I say weren't set, they weren't set at the beginning of the engagement. And this is where you'll find yourself working with clients that are constantly calling, emailing, texting. They're all over you asking for updates. Where are you at? What are you doing? When are we going to see results? What does this mean in our reports? All of these sorts of questions and concerns that are coming from clients that haven't had any sort of expectations set. Now, when I say expectations, you should be covering things, and this is again at the very beginning of the engagement, not several months into a campaign. You should be talking about things like, this is what you can expect working with us. This is what we expect from you in terms of responsibilities. These are the types of reports that you're going to receive. This is what the reports will cover. This is when you'll be billed. This is when we'll have our end of month strategy sessions. All of these things that clearly define the deliverables and also what the client can expect overall. Next point, lack of transparency. This is another big one, and this ties in with a point that I made just a moment ago about clients that never hear from anyone. When clients have no idea what you're doing, that's a problem. And that doesn't necessarily mean to say that you need to provide them with an itemized breakdown of every single task that you're doing in a timesheet. It just means that they need to have a rough idea or some sense of what you're doing, and you can solve that problem easily by having your end of month strategy sessions and also providing work summary sheets where you outline the work that was done this month and maybe even recommendations and the work that's coming up next month. And the next point is insufficient budget, and this is fairly common. Insufficient budget, this causes constraints and chokes the campaign. If you set your rates at say $3,500 a month, and you've got a client or a prospect rather, and he says, listen, we can only afford $900 a month, and you say yes, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you just won't have the budget to cater for the resources and, to be able to cover your operational expenses and software, and you pay your wages and team and content and links and all of that other stuff. It just won't work. So insufficient budget is certainly another one that can cause cancellation to service. So what can we do? What are the solutions? Let's have a look at a few of them. Firstly, communication is everything. You need to be honest, upfront, and transparent with your clients. Now, I really want to emphasize the importance of this, again, at the very beginning of the engagement, not several months into a campaign. And I know for a lot of the students that I've worked with, a lot of free SEO consultants, especially freelancers, have a tendency to avoid certain conversations. Many conversations can be quite uncomfortable, and it can be easy to try and avoid those types of conversations, especially where, okay, you need to increase the budget, let's say, or the time frame. This campaign is going to take maybe 18 months before you're in a position of being competitive in the marketplace. or perhaps there's some other reason, there's something else, there's some other problem that needs to be discussed, and there's that fear around having that conversation. And it's kind of ironic. It's a fear of, an avoidance of having a certain conversation in fear of losing the client. But because you don't have that conversation, that then festers and builds to the point where the client cancels out. So I always make the recommendation to be honest, upfront, and transparent with your clients. If the campaign's not going well, have that conversation. Second point is start hosting regular end of month strategy sessions. Okay, you want that regular interaction with your clients. You want to avoid situations where the client is sitting around thinking, haven't heard from anyone, I don't know what they're doing. Oh, here's another bill for $3,500. Oh, that's an awful place for clients to be. They want to see that the work's being done. They want to know where the money is being spent. They want to see that they're getting results. And you need to articulate that through regular get-togethers. Okay, and this doesn't essentially mean that you have to be meeting with the client every second day or once a week. This is about setting expectations at the very beginning and saying, okay, once a month we're going to have these strategy sessions. We're going to cover all of these things, so you know exactly where we're at, what's being done, and perhaps what's coming up again in the future, and touch on all of those areas of importance and address your clients' questions and concerns. Next, set expectations during your initial pitch. I've kind of already touched on this, but when you are onboarding your clients and you're holding your presentation, you need to clarify those expectations. Timeframes, investment summary, inclusions and exclusions, all of those things, forms of communication, all of those things need to be clarified at the very beginning. Now, next point here I've got here is define and enforce strict communication channels. Okay, you want to avoid situations where the client can email you, text you, call you on your own personal phone, can message you through social media. You want to avoid all of those scenarios. And again, this is part of setting expectations at the very beginning. You want to say, if you need assistance or if you have a question, you've got to use our ticketing system. And we're available between the hours of 9 to 4 or 8 to 5 or whatever those hours might be. Next point, of course, focusing on revenue, not vanity metrics. This is the big one. Don't send reports full of meaningless technical jargon. Clients hate that stuff. They can't understand it and they won't hesitate to cancel out. Celebrate benchmarks with your clients around earning milestones. Okay, you got to get on board with clients, and if they've had their best month, I mean, this is a tremendous place to be. I've done this with numerous clients where they've called and said, John, we've just done $200,000 this month. Can't thank you enough. You've got to get excited and, celebrate with them. Next point is clearly demonstrate a return on investments and your clients will never want to leave. I know I keep repeating this point, but it's so important. Align with their goals and objectives. This is another big one, okay? When you align with the client's goals and objectives, we're both on the same page here. We're working together. And if they feel that sense of security and confidence in knowing that, well, then they're not going to leave. So firstly, have the same discussion with your clients. I spoke about this one of my previous videos. If they're talking about, if the client's talking about, hey, we've got to sell more of these blue widgets, and every time they speak to you, you're talking about keywords and articles, then that's going to become tiresome for the client over time. And they're going to feel a sense of, they're going to get off a call and think, wow, these guys are actually on board with us. Do they really understand what it is we're trying to do? So you've got to have the same discussion with your clients. Next point is figure out where they want to focus their efforts and go all in on that. This sort of aligns with the previous point. If you get on a call with a prospect or a client, they say, this month we really want to focus on selling, again, let's say blue widgets. Well, then go all in on that and say, okay, Karen, this month, for the next 6 months projected, we're going to be just focusing on blue widgets. We're going to go all in on that and map something out and discuss it with them during end of month strategy calls so they can, again, they can hang up the phone and have confidence in knowing, okay, these guys are on board. They know what they're doing and we're all headed in the same direction. Next point, clients simply want confidence in knowing you're both working together to achieve the same goal, which is exactly what I just said. They want to know that you're not pulling in separate directions. You're both working together in order to achieve their goals and objectives. And lastly, my last point here is be a partner, not just another SEO agency. And this doesn't mean you need to, get involved with their business operations and, do step outside the scope of SEO. But it does mean that you might need to go just a little bit further than, let's say, traditional SEO, who all they care about is just, yep, okay, keywords, rankings, articles, links, okay, bye, and hang up the phone. You want to avoid that sort of thing. And if you can elevate your agency to that standard where your clients feel as though you're more of a partner than just a commodity, let's say, then your retention rates will certainly be improved. Next, build a relationship. Avoid treating your clients like numbers in a spreadsheet. I spoke with someone years ago and he said, they got my name wrong. They answered the phone and they were calling me not only by my wrong name, but also referring to some other business because the account manager had screwed up at their end in their CRM, I think. And he said, I just felt like a number in a database. It was so impersonal and disingenuous, and it didn't go down well at all. So you got to make sure that you establish, at the very least, a foundation. And this doesn't mean that you have to, become best friends, and that's certainly something you want to avoid. But you need to establish some sort of relationship with your clients. So there's that, you've got that bond there. The next point, this is something that I do within my own agency, and it's what I recommend within the training. Send a welcome gift when new clients come on board. And this doesn't, this is a really interesting one because I know that I've sent small gifts, in the vicinity. There might be a $30 hamper or a, $40 bottle of wine, or maybe some movie tickets or a voucher for the client's favorite restaurant. That in itself can have such a huge impact and build such a level of confidence and trust that small investment of, let's say, $50 or even $100 or whatever it might be, that small investment of $100 can come back at you tenfold. And what I mean by that is, hey, wow, no one's done this before. We just got this hamper. This is brilliant. We're not going anywhere. These guys are fantastic, especially when you can back that up with high quality work. So have a think about sending a welcome gift when new clients come on board. Next point here is listen and take notes. And this is where they'll have certain areas of motivation. Again, let's say we really want to sell more trampolines this month. Well, if you're having the same discussion and you help them achieve that, and you're not jumping on, calls and talking about the technical jargon that I've said within emails. You're talking about trampolines. They're going to, again, feel a sense of reassurance and confidence in knowing that you understand and you align with that area of motivation. Next thing, educate your clients. Now, this is a tricky one because I've had this conversation with various SEO consultants over the years, and have said to me, John, we don't have time for this. We can't be hosting training sessions or doing in-house training. We're flat out running our own operation. We just don't have time. Now, hear me out here. One thing that I always recommend, and this is my first point here, consider providing a client portal with short videos covering the basics. Now, you can record these short videos, quickly within, let's say, Loom or an equivalent, and say, hey, this is what we do, and this is how this process works, and this is why we do it, and this is when it happens within the campaign, blah, 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 blah. And you can wrap something up really quickly. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be rough and ready. You can take that recording and you can put it into a client portal. And each and every time a client has a question or a concern and they say, we don't understand why you're doing this, or why you're targeting zero search volume terms, or we don't understand why you've structured the site this way. You can quite easily, avoid all of those long drawn out back and forth conversations where you're essentially repeating yourself over and over and over with every single client, having to explain certain processes. You can say, hey, jump into the client portal, watch the video in there. It covers that in detail. That's a fantastic way of doing it. And again, I think the biggest advantage of doing that is, there are probably numerous advantages. Demonstrate expertise, build trust and all that good stuff, but it can separate you from that being tied to having to educate your clients individually. Next point, focus on the back end. Put the same effort into the back end, that is fulfillment, as you do the front end, sales and marketing. Now, as you probably already know, the majority of SEO agencies, and this is probably true for all digital marketing agencies, or many services for that matter, is they have this big fancy front end where they've got all of this, it's all roses and rainbows, and their sales and marketing team make all of these wonderful promises, and they lure people in, they pay the money, and they start working with the agency, and it goes to shit. And this is where, you have that buyer's remorse, and the clients are thinking, wait a minute, this is not what I expected it to be. So you need to think about that effort that you've made on the front end, right? And how much investment, time you've invested in terms of chasing down the client, getting the lead, pitching your services, and doing all of that good stuff. You need to back it up on the other side, back it up on the back end, okay, with the same level of care and detail. And I made a note here to say the best clients to get are the ones you already have. It's much easier to keep the clients that you have rather than be constantly having to chase new clients. Now, next point is gather feedback. Okay, you need to position yourself so that you can ask questions, constantly get feedback, and listen. Okay, I make a point of this, and I'm going to touch on this again in just a moment. Each and every time you speak with a client, you should be taking that opportunity to say, "Hey, are you happy with everything? Are you happy with where things are at? Is there anything we could be doing better? Blah blah blah." Right? Don't be too shy to ask those questions, because you're much better off finding out there's a problem immediately rather than, again, letting it fester to the point where the client goes, "Oh, I've had enough," and they cancel. And that brings me to my next point is you want to be identifying issues and constantly improving. And the best way to do that is to put yourself in that feedback loop, right? This client's complaining about that. That's worth listening to. That's a genuine complaint. We need to fix it. And I say that's a genuine complaint because clients will request all sorts of things. And you need to be able to make the decision between, okay, that's just nonsense, and this is a genuine suggestion, or it's feedback that we can actually use to improve. And lastly, ask clients, the ones that canceled, you got to ask them, why did you cancel? Get them on a call, ask them, send them a form, ask them to fill something out. We'll do both, get them to fill out a form and then jump on a call with them and just get them to be honest. Next point, of course, is improve your service offering. This is pretty self-explanatory. I've seen a lot of people that will work with a lot of consultants where they say, our clients are bailing after 6 months. We don't know why. Well, you start digging into their operations and things are pretty damn messy. Now, I want to wrap this up by saying prevention is key. This touches back on what I mentioned just a moment ago around asking clients during meetings if they're happy. Every single time I held an end-of-month strategy session with a client, I would say, are you happy? Are you happy with where the campaign's at? Is there anything that we could do better? Is there any way that we could improve? Let me know. I want to know, are there any problems? I'd even ask them, I'd say, is there anything that you're not happy with? Because that puts you in a pretty powerful position, because if there is a problem, because clients won't often tell you. Again, a lot of clients will just stay quiet and avoid that, those confrontational discussions. But if you ask the question during those meetings, whether it be, in an email or during a Zoom call, in-person meeting or whatever that might be, ask them, hey, how are we doing? How can we do better? Is there anything that you're not happy with? By asking those questions and getting that feedback from clients, you can address these problems and take care of them and fix them so that over time you can improve. And as a result of that, you'll be able to increase your retention rates. Hey, if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more, head over to bringtheseo.com. We provide business development training for SEO consultants wanting to improve their processes, increase profits, and scale to $100,000 a month or more without all the stress and overwhelm.